There was once a young man named Elias who lived in a quiet town between hills and river mist. From the outside, his life looked calm. A modest apartment, a steady job, a familiar coffee cup waiting for him every morning. But inside, he carried a storm that never quite broke. It began with his father, a man of few words and many sighs, whose love came wrapped in silence and worn-out work shirts. As a boy, Elias had waited for simple phrases the way other children waited for gifts. "Son, I'm proud of you. I'm glad you're here." But his father spoke in instructions instead of affection. "Do your homework, close the door, don't be late." The house was never cruel, just quiet in all the wrong places. So, as Elias grew older, something inside him hardened into distance. He learned to speak to everyone, except the one person he most wanted to understand. Years slipped by like pages turning in a book he wasn't really reading. Elias moved out, found work, made friends who laughed loudly and hugged easily. But whenever his phone lit up with his father's name, a familiar tension crept into his chest. Their conversations were short and practical, like exchanging receipts. "How's work?" "Fine." "Need anything?" "No, I'm okay." Each call ended with a silence where the words they both needed hovered, then fell away, unspoken. One autumn evening, the sky bruised purple and gold as Elias drove back to his childhood home. His father had called earlier, voice softer than usual. "If you're free, maybe come by this weekend." No reason given, just a pause heavy enough to feel. Now, as he turned into the familiar driveway, he noticed how small the house looked, as if time had been quietly shrinking it. The porch light flickered, moths circling it like lost thoughts. Inside, the air smelled of old books, tea, and something else, a faint trace of worry. His father sat at the worn kitchen table, hands wrapped around a mug that had long since gone cold. He looked older, somehow smaller in his chair, as if life had been chiseling away at him grain by grain. They talked about the weather, the price of vegetables, the neighbor's dog. Words skimmed the surface like stones skipping across water, never daring to sink. Finally, his father cleared his throat, eyes fixed on a crack in the table. "You know," he said, voice barely more than a whisper, "I was never very good at saying things." The confession hung between them like a fragile bridge. Elias felt his chest tighten. The boy inside him wanted to shout, "I noticed." But the man he had become stayed quiet, waiting. His father took a breath that seemed to cost him something. "When your mother died," he continued slowly, "I didn't know how to be both strong and kind at the same time. I thought if I softened, everything would fall apart. So I worked, and I stayed silent, and I hoped you understood." His hands shook slightly. "I don't know if I ever told you how proud I am of you. I don't know if I ever told you how much I love you. I'm sorry for all the words I never said." The room went very still. Somewhere outside, a dog barked, a car passed, leaves scratched against the window. Inside, Elias felt something long frozen begin to thaw. He suddenly saw his father not as the distant figure of his childhood, but as a man who had been afraid too. Afraid of breaking, afraid of failing, afraid that tenderness might undo him. In that moment, Elias realized something quietly devastating. He had been waiting his whole life to hear these words, but his father had been waiting just as long to speak them. Two hearts living in the same story, trapped on different pages. He stood up, walked around the table, and placed a hand on his father's shoulder. The fabric of the old shirt was thin, worn smooth by years of use. "Dad," Elias said, his own voice unsteady, "I thought you didn't say those things because they weren't there. But now I see you were just carrying them alone." He paused, letting the silence soften instead of sharpen. "I love you too, and I'm sorry for all the times I chose distance when I wanted to choose you." His father looked up, eyes glossed with unshed tears. For the first time in Elias's memory, they hugged, not a polite, brief gesture, but a full, trembling embrace. It was clumsy and imperfect and utterly real. In that small kitchen, surrounded by peeling paint and humming appliances, years of unspoken words finally exhaled. What had been heavy became light, not because the past had changed, but because the present had finally found its voice. Later that night, as Elias drove back through the darkened streets, he rolled down the window. Cool air rushed in, carrying the scent of wet earth and distant smokewood. His chest felt strangely spacious, as if someone had opened a window inside. He realized then that unspoken words don't just weigh down the ones who keep them, they also starve the ones who need to receive them. And sometimes all it takes to free both hearts is one brave, imperfect sentence. Maybe the real burden we carry isn't what happened to us, but everything we were too afraid to say about it. The apology waiting behind our pride, the "I love you" hiding under our hurt, the "I'm scared" we disguise as anger. Life is shorter than we think and kinder than we allow. The words we keep locked inside don't disappear. They turn into distances and silences and years we never get back. But the moment we speak with honesty, the past loosens its grip and the future suddenly has room to breathe. If this story stirred something quietly inside you, share it with someone you've been meaning to speak to, or someone who might be carrying their own unspoken words. And if you'd like more stories that feel like a soft lantern in the dark, subscribe to The Talking Tales, where every story holds a light and every listening heart is welcome.